So, imagine giving up like 1,500 hours of your life.
That is a massive amount of time.
Right. You're sweating in this sweltering restaurant kitchen. You're missing your kids' bedtime every single night, and you're paying for the bus just to get to and from your shifts.
You're doing exactly what society tells you to do.
Exactly. You are doing absolutely everything the world tells you to do to, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But then, at the end of the year, you look at your finances and your total net income hasn't gone up by a single penny. I mean, not 1 cent.
Which is just soul-crushing. And for millions of people, that scenario isn't some bizarre math error. It is quite literally the law.
Yeah, and the desire to be financially secure, to actually build lasting wealth, is something I think almost every single listener
Oh,
shares.
absolutely.
Yet only a tiny fraction of the population ever breaks out of that paycheck to paycheck cycle to actually achieve it. So, today we are taking a deep dive into the invisible economic forces that make building wealth so incredibly difficult.
It's a huge topic.
It really is. We are pulling from a massive stack of sources for this deep dive, looking into macroeconomic data, labor market research, and the really fascinating world of behavioral theories.
Right, because our mission today is to decode the specific mathematical, systemic, and, well, psychological barriers standing between you and financial freedom.
And what stands out immediately in all of this research is that failing to build wealth is rarely just about a lack of effort. I mean, or willpower.
No, not at all. The average person is walking into this massive headwind made of structural barriers. They're fighting the fundamental mathematics of how income is generated.
Yeah.
They're battling global economic shifts. And in a lot of cases, they're literally fighting the evolutionary biological wiring of their own brains.
Which is wild to think of. So, if we want to understand why wealth is so elusive, I feel like we have to start at the absolute bedrock of the whole system.
Makes sense.
Like, where does income actually come from in a market economy? Because I think most people assume income just comes from, having a job.
Right. And that assumption is the very first major hurdle. Because in a market economy, income fundamentally derives from ownership.
Okay, ownership of what exactly?
Specifically, it comes from owning the means of production. And I know that sounds like a dusty term from an old lecture hall, but it simply refers to resources or assets that generate value.
Right, like physical things.
Yeah, or intellectual things. If you own commercial real estate, you collect rent. If you own equity in a company, you collect dividends. If you own intellectual property, you get royalties.
But for the vast majority of us, the only major resource we own is our own labor.
Exactly. We essentially own ourselves.
So we take our time, our energy, and our skills, and we just rent them out to an employer.
That is the core dynamic for most people. And relying entirely on renting out your labor introduces the ultimate unbreakable economic constraint, which is scarcity.
Because there's only so much of us to go around.
Right. Scarcity dictates that human wants will always exceed what's available. But the most brutally scarce resource in the universe is time.
Yeah, for sure.
Whether someone is a multi-billionaire tech CEO or a struggling single parent, every single human being has a hard cap of 24 hours in a single day.
So if the only asset you have to sell is your time, you are immediately hitting a ceiling.
Yeah.
I mean, selling our time for money is kind of like trying to fill a swimming pool with a single bucket. It really doesn't matter how fast you run. There is a hard mathematical limit to how many trips you can make in 24 hours.
That is a perfect analogy. And that physical limit is then compounded by the fundamental math of labor markets.
How so?
Well, employers operate under a very strict principle. They will never pay a worker more than the value of their marginal productivity.
Okay, I want to pause on that term, marginal productivity, just to make sure we're clear.
Sure.
I understand that if I'm working on a factory assembly line, right?
Right.
And I personally assemble 2 widgets an hour, and the company sells those widgets for $4 each, I am generating $8 an hour in revenue. So the company's never going to pay me $9 an hour because they would literally lose $1 for every hour I'm on the clock.
Exactly. They'd go out of business.
But I work on a salary. I don't get paid per widget. I just sit in meetings and answer emails all day. Surely this math doesn't apply to the modern corporate world.
Oh, it absolutely still applies, just on a more macro scale within the firm. Even if you are salaried and sitting in meetings, your company's finance department is constantly calculating the revenue your division generates versus its total headcount and overhead.
Wow, so they are always doing the math in the background.
Always. If your role or your team stops contributing more to the bottom line than the total cost of your compensation package, so your salary, benefits, office space, you become an economic liability.
That's pretty harsh.
It is cold, calculated math. It's never about whether your manager likes you or whether your salary covers the rising cost of your rent.
Right.
Your wealth, if you rely solely on labor, is strictly capped by the hours you can stay awake, multiplied by the marginal value of what you produce during those hours.
Okay, so if my physical time is permanently capped at 24 hours and my employer mathematically refuses to pay me more than the value I produce, then my only option is to make my time exponentially more valuable, right?
That's the logical next step.
I have to skill up. I have to become more productive. But when we look at the labor market research in our sources, it seems like trying to make your time more valuable is getting insanely hard for a massive chunk of the population.
It really is. You kind of have to view the labor market as this relentless, ongoing race between supply and demand.
Okay.
And over the last 40 years or so, two monumental macroeconomic forces have completely rewritten the rules of that race: information technology and globalization.
The big buzzwords.
Right, but they act as a double-edged sword,
Hmm.
and they cut very differently, depending entirely on your specific skill set.
So how does that play out for, say, the baseline, average wage worker?
For lower wage or routine labor, technology and globalization act as a direct substitute.
A substitute meaning they just replace you.
Exactly. Think about the physical barriers that used to protect local jobs. 30 years ago, if a company in Chicago needed a bookkeeping department or customer service reps, they had to hire people who lived in or around Chicago.
Yeah, you had to physically go to the office.
Right. But today, with the massive drop in global communication costs, high-speed internet, cloud computing, that same company can seamlessly outsource that work to a team in Manila or Bangalore for a fraction of the cost.
Or they just buy an automated software system to do the bookkeeping instantly.
Precisely. So the demand for that domestic labor completely falls off a cliff. And when demand drops, wages either stagnate or plummet.
Okay, but I have to offer a pushback here. I'm looking at this data from our sources comparing the U.S. economy in 1970 to 2021.
Okay, let's hear it.
It clearly states that per capita GDP jumped from about $5,000 in 1970 to over $63,000 in 2021. I mean, that is more than a 12-fold increase. We are producing astronomical amounts of wealth compared to 50 years ago.
It's a massive increase, yes.
So shouldn't everyone be drastically richer? Aren't we all vastly more productive than we used to be?
This highlights one of the most misunderstood aspects of modern economics. You are entirely correct that average productivity and total economic output have exploded.
Right.
But those massive gains are not distributed evenly across the workforce. Let's look closer at the specific numbers in that same data set.
Okay.
While the overall economic output per person went up more than 12 times, the average hourly wage for a manufacturing worker only rose from $3.23 to roughly $30.11.
Wow. That's barely a 9-fold increase.
Exactly. And compare that to the cost of living. The data shows the cost of an average new home went from around $22,000 in 1970 to over $400,000 in 2021.
So wait, the cost of a house went up almost 20 times, but the baseline wage didn't even go up 10 times, despite the whole economy growing by 12 times.
Yes.
That is an absolutely crushing squeeze on the average worker. Where's all that extra money going?
It's going to the people on the other side of that double-edged sword.
Okay.
While technology acts as a substitute for routine labor, it acts as a massive complement to accumulated human capital.
Human capital meaning like education and skills.
Exactly. Advanced education, specialized skills, complex problem solving. For a high-wage, highly skilled worker, technology is a superpower.
Right, because a modern software engineer or a financial analyst can oversee exponentially more systems and generate vastly more revenue than their counterpart could in 1970.
Exactly. The demand for those high-level skills skyrockets, which drives their wages up dramatically. This polarization is why the financial value of a bachelor's degree has reached historic highs, even with the burden of student loans.
That makes a lot of sense.
Furthermore, the lion's share of that new wealth goes to the people who actually own the technology and the capital in the first place.
So the economy is essentially splitting in two. If you're doing routine work, you are competing against the entire globe and endless software upgrades, which pushes your value down. But if you have highly specialized skills, technology acts like a lever that multiplies your value.
The labor market forces are creating a widening chasm, yes.
But let's assume the best case scenario for a listener. Let's say you navigate this perfectly. You get the advanced degree, you acquire the high-level human capital, you land the high-paying job where technology makes you super productive.
Okay, the ideal path.
Right. You are bringing home a fantastic paycheck. But according to the research on wealth accumulation in our sources, a massive number of people in this exact scenario still fail to build actual generational wealth. Why is that?
Because even if you manage to outmaneuver the global labor market, you still have to outmaneuver your own biology.
Our biology.
Yeah, human psychology is actively fighting against long-term financial success. In economics, there is a concept known as intertemporal decision-making.
Okay, what does that mean?
It describes the constant daily battle between consuming goods right now in the present versus saving your resources for the future. Building wealth absolutely requires taking your surplus income and supplying it to financial markets through savings and investments.
Right. And if you're listening to this, your internal monologue is probably saying, I know I should save. I know I need a retirement account. We all know the math of compound
Of
interest,
course we do.
but knowing it and actually doing it are completely different things.
Exactly. Traditional economic models failed for a long time because they assumed we were perfectly rational, calculating machines who always acted in our long-term best interest.
Which is definitely not true.
Not at all. Behavioral economics stepped in to point out a glaring flaw our brains did not evolve to care about 30 years from now.
Right. We evolved to survive the afternoon.
Exactly. Thousands of years ago, if you found a calorie-dense food source, the rational choice was to consume it immediately before it spoiled or a predator took it.
So we are literally hardwired for immediate gratification.
We heavily discount the value of future rewards. So when you ask someone to take a portion of their paycheck today and lock it away in an invisible, abstract account that they can't touch for 4 decades, you're asking them to fight millions of years of evolutionary programming.
Programming that is screaming at them to consume those resources right now. It's like our brains are running ancient software in a modern financial world.
That's a great way to put it.
We're biologically wired to prefer the immediate reward of a new gadget today over the abstract concept of a retirement account 30 years from now. So we procrastinate.
The procrastination is a huge factor. The research points to a perfect real-world example regarding retirement savings.
Oh, the opt-in versus opt-out thing?
Yes. When a company structures their retirement plan so that new employees have to actively fill out paperwork to opt in, a shocking percentage, up to 20% in some studies, simply never do it.
Wow, they just leave free money on the table.
They get overwhelmed by the fun choices. They tell themselves they'll do it next week, and years go by. They lose out on massive amounts of compounding interest.
Right.
But when companies switch the structure to an opt-out system, where employees are automatically enrolled on day one and have to actively fill out forms to stop contributing, participation rates skyrocket.
Almost no one opts out.
Exactly. The underlying mathematics of the retirement plan didn't change one bit. The only thing that changed was removing the psychological friction.
We just take the path of least resistance, whatever it is. And I assume this ancient biological programming plays heavily into how we invest the money once we actually manage to save it.
Oh, it creates absolute havoc for the average investor through a mechanism called loss aversion.
Loss aversion, okay.
Behavioral economists have proven that humans do not process financial gains and losses symmetrically. From an evolutionary standpoint, missing out on an extra meal was a bummer, but losing the meal you already had could mean starvation.
So our brains are wired to fear loss way more than they desire gain.
Exactly. The data shows we feel the psychological pain of losing $1 roughly 2.25 times more intensely than we feel the joy of gaining $1.
Wait, really? Over 2 times as much pain?
Yes.
So if my stock portfolio drops by 10% in a week, my brain doesn't view it as a normal market fluctuation. My brain treats it like a literal tiger attack.
The panic is visceral. And this loss aversion turns average people into highly emotional, deeply irrational investors.
Right, because they panic.
When the stock market dips, the intense psychological pain of seeing their portfolio turn red causes them to panic and sell their assets at the absolute bottom of the market.
Which permanently locks in their losses.
Exactly. They overreact to short-term downside risk and completely derail the long-term compounding growth that is required to build wealth.
Man. And while we are talking about behavioral traps, we have to mention the ultimate wealth destroyer highlighted in the sources, which is credit card debt.
Oh, absolutely.
Hundreds of billions of dollars are held in revolving credit card debt, often carrying average interest rates anywhere from 12 to 18%.
Credit card debt is the mathematical inverse of wealth building. Instead of supplying your surplus to the market to earn a return, you are paying a massive premium to consume something today instead of tomorrow.
It's like negative compounding.
Precisely. When you're paying 18% interest on past consumption, it mathematically obliterates your ability to save. Your past is actively working against your future.
Okay, so to recap the gauntlet we've run so far, to actually build wealth, you have to find a way to break the physical 24-hour limit on your labor. You have to constantly outrun global outsourcing and software automation by relentlessly upgrading your skills.
Right.
And you have to fight your own evolutionary biology to save and invest rationally without panicking. That is a monumental task for a highly educated person with a great salary.
It really is.
But for people starting at the very bottom of the income ladder, the situation is infinitely more frustrating. There is an actual structural barrier built into the system itself that actively penalizes them for trying.
You are referring to what economists call the poverty trap.
Yes.
When we analyze poverty and economic inequality, this is perhaps the most devastating mechanism we encounter.
We touched on this in the very beginning with the hook, but I want to walk through the actual math of it because it is staggering.
The poverty trap occurs when government assistance programs are designed with a flawed phase-out structure. The intention of these programs is to provide a safety net, obviously.
Right, to help people survive.
But problems arise when the benefits are reduced at the exact same rate that a person's earned income increases. Let's look closely at the specific scenario detailed in the research.
Okay, lay it out for us.
Imagine a single father with one child. He finds an opportunity to work as a server in a restaurant, making $6 an hour. If he chooses not to work at all, the government provides him with a $10,000 welfare stipend for the year to cover basic survival.
Okay, so the baseline is 0 hours of labor and $10,000 of income.
Right. Now, suppose this father wants to climb the economic ladder. He takes the job. He works incredibly hard, putting in 1,500 hours over the course of the year.
That's a lot of shifts.
1,500 hours multiplied by his $6 hourly wage means he earns $9,000 in gross wages.
Okay, so he earned $9,000 through his own sweat and labor.
But here is where the trap snaps shut. Because of the way this specific assistance program is designed, for every single dollar he earns from his job, his government benefits are reduced by exactly $1.
Oh, no.
His $10,000 stipend is reduced by the $9,000 he earned, leaving him with only $1,000 in government support.
So wait, if you add his $9,000 in wages to his remaining $1,000 in assistance, his total income for the year is exactly $10,000.
Exactly. He gave up 1,500 hours of his life. That is time he spent away from his child. Time he could have spent going to night school or learning a trade.
Time he spent paying for transportation and work clothes.
And it has absolutely zero net financial gain to show for it. His total household income remains perfectly flat whether he works 0 hours or 1,500 hours.
Wow. So we've essentially engineered a system where getting a job or earning a raise can leave you mathematically stagnant, completely killing the economic incentive to climb the ladder.
Yes. Economists refer to this as facing an effective marginal tax rate of 100%. The system is inadvertently engineered to kill the economic incentive to work.
If you are listening to this right now, you are probably feeling a deep sense of frustration, maybe even anger. It's completely counterintuitive to everything we are taught about the reward for hard work.
It really is.
It's like putting this father on a treadmill that automatically speeds up to match his pace. He's burning calories, he's exhausted, but he hasn't moved a single inch forward.
Right, and rational actors looking at this math might logically choose to stay completely out of the labor force. If working guarantees you lose your safety net without actually increasing your take-home pay, getting a job becomes an economically irrational decision.
That is incredibly broken.
This is why a massive focus of modern economic policy is trying to smooth out that phase-out period, ensuring that workers always experience at least some net financial gain for every hour they dedicate to working.
When you lay out all of these forces side by side, it fundamentally shifts how you view the whole concept of financial success. The narrative of just work harder feels incredibly hollow when you understand the actual mechanics at play.
The traditional advice of simply putting your head down, grinding away at a wage-paying job and hoping for the best, it's mathematically insufficient for most people. The constraints are simply too tight.
To bring this all together for you, the listener, the reason wealth is so rare isn't just a lack of effort. It requires surviving a perfect storm.
Definitely.
It requires recognizing that selling your labor is a game constrained by a strict limit on time. It requires dodging the macroeconomic wrecking balls of globalization and automation.
Right.
It involves constantly fighting your own brain's desire for immediate dopamine hits and its crippling fear of financial loss. And, depending on where you start, it might mean navigating systemic traps that literally punish your ambition.
Viewing the economy through this multifaceted lens makes the scale of the challenge very clear.
Which leaves us with a final, somewhat provocative thought to mull over as we wrap up this deep dive.
Let's hear it.
We established at the very beginning that the true root of income in a market economy is owning the means of production. And the trap that the vast majority of us fall into is that we only own our own labor.
Right.
So if selling your time is fundamentally capped by the 24-hour clock, maybe the real secret to escaping the wealth trap isn't just trying to squeeze a few more drops of productivity out of your day. Maybe the most vital shift you can make is transitioning your focus from selling your labor to acquiring ownership.
I think that's the key. Whether that means acquiring intellectual property, building equity in a small business, or consistently buying shares in the broader financial markets.
Exactly.
The ultimate goal is to build a portfolio where something else is generating value for you, an asset that is not constrained by your biological need to sleep, eat, or take a day off.
Because as long as you are exclusively selling your time, you are always going to be sweating it out on that treadmill. The only way to finally catch your breath and actually build lasting wealth is to stop running and start owning the machine.
Well said.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We hope this exploration into the invisible forces of the economy gives you a powerful new lens to view your daily financial choices. Keep questioning the systems around you, keep learning, and we'll catch you next time.